Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you were listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable podcast. This is podcast number 607. My name is Eric Nielsen, and with me today, I have no co-hosts. So I'm on my own. Corey is in Arkansas on vacation, and Matt Longeth, my regular guy, he's out at a customer site. So it is just myself and our guest. Today is Wednesday, June 1st, 2022. Welcome to summertime. Memorial Day is over here in the United States, and we're back off of a holiday weekend and enjoying being back in the office. On the show today, we're going to be covering VMware Cloud Foundation. We've got on the show Michael Rebmann, Senior Solution Engineer, VMware Office of the CTO. I think he works out of Switzerland. So thanks, Mike, for being here so late. We'll do the news first because there is a bit of news, and then we'll get to our guest, Michael. So the news, well, boy, there's been a lot of news. We can now talk about the fact that Broadcom has made an offer for VMware, tendered an offer. It is not closed yet, and we are still in an open period. So we are waiting for other offers to see if anybody else comes out of the woodwork. But VMware is now in play. There are offers on the table, and it looks like one way or the other we'll get acquired. And so we're anxiously waiting to see how this plays out. We don't think that anything will happen till the end of the year. Even if the offer gets tendered and accepted, we'll probably run throughout the rest of the year, business as usual. So we will be doing VMware Explore. That is going on. We've been told that it will continue to go on, and we will do both US and Europe. So I'm kind of excited about that. And we have also been kind of told that no matter what happens to the acquisition, all our products will still be supported and they'll continue forward. And at the same time, they are also keeping the VMware name. So if Broadcom does win the bid, we will still have VMware, and all of the VMware products will still be being sold. Maybe how we sell the products will change. Maybe how to go to market will change. But in a real sense, the products and the brand and everything you know about VMware will continue to operate. And my guess is the things that will change is how do we go to market? You know, do we continue to do the kind of marketing stuff that we do? How do we sell it? But the reality is they're still committing to running the products as we always have, and they're actually going to double down on the data center itself. So Broadcom is a big data center tech delivery company. They deliver chips, they deliver software, they operate data centers. And so they're really focused on the data center, right? Which, you know, if you go back to the Pat Gelsinger days, when we had Paul Moritz running VMware, Paul Moritz kind of rotated to cloud and everything was cloud. We didn't have any cloud products back then, but he was still talking cloud all the time. When Pat Gelsinger took over, we rotated back to the data center, vSphere, virtualization. We did vSAN. It was really focused on SDDC and the data center automation. If you look in the last year or two, we have really rotated back to cloud and everything cloud, working with multi-cloud. And I see that stuff, and I know but that gets kind of away from our core business, right? Which our core business has always been operating data centers. And so I think that either way, this is probably good if you're a data center operator, which is, I think, 80% of our customer base operates data centers and needs data center software. I see Broadcom coming in and investing in the data center space and the solutions we give to the data center. And then I think other things that are outside of the data center, multi-cloud, cloud services, and that kind of stuff will be an interesting thing to see how Carbon Black and others fit into that offering, or whether they do something else with it. So that's my take on the situation, which is if you're vSphere, you're SDDC, you're vSAN, if you're Cloud Foundation, like we're going to talk about today, I don't see a lot of things changing here. Maybe the price changes. Maybe there's not me doing podcasts any longer, but I think that the products set themselves will continue to go forward. And I think your investment in the technology is still relevant. That's my assessment. Now, a lot of people think, oh, this is going to be the end of VMware. Well, I think VMware has been a brand, independent company. It's been bought by EMC. It was a division of EMC. Then they spun it back out. Then it was its own company owned by EMC. Then it got sold to Dell. Dell ran it as, as just a software division, but a public company at the same time, owned it 80%. Then they spun it out. And now here comes Broadcom looking at traditional core products and trying to monetize those and focus on those. So, I can see that we're going to consolidate accounting, finance, and a lot of these jobs there will be duplication that we'll save money on. But then that allows just you to take some of that money and continue the core product. And I think that Broadcom is all about core product and technology. So honestly, I think if I were a vSphere customer, I would be less concerned than I would if we didn't do something like this, because if a company gets torn in too many parts, pretty soon you have like a Sun Solaris kind of thing. So that's my assessment. I think it'll be a year to see how everything plays out, and then see what Broadcom does on the pricing side of the house. I think they're going to invest in the core products like they always have. So that's my take. All right, with that, VMware Explorer is happening, because if you really look at it, VMware Explorer talks about VMware products. So we are going to be continuing to talk about VMware products. You can come to VMware Explorer, say hello to us, engage with us, learn about all the VMware products that operate the data center, new versions of technology. We're going to talk today about what's new with VMware Cloud Foundation and kind of go through that. And then come to VMware, say hello to everybody. That will be August 29th through September 1st in San Francisco, and then Europe, November 7th through the 10th. I know that we've had excellent turnout on all the VMUGs, so I'm expecting that we'll have pretty good turnout at both of these events, because people just want to get back to seeing real people and engaging with people. And I will tell you, it is very exciting to see people. With that, I think that's all I've got for news. Got the Broadcom, got VMware Explorer. Excited about that. I know they're doing another multi-cloud briefing coming up in, I think, late June. So pay attention. We'll be covering that as well. So business as usual as we continue going through things. And with that, let me introduce our guest, Michael Rebmann. I think that's how we say it. You're senior solution engineer. Michael, I know the last time we had you on, I think it was March 10th, 2021 for podcast number 546, where we were talking about Carbon Black. So welcome back to the show. We always ask, give us a little summary of what you do, how long you've been in the IT industry, what do you work on? Then we'll talk a little about your blog.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Like I said before, I'm very surprised that it has been already 15, 16 months that I was the last time on the show. So it's great to talk about VCF today. Again, yes, I'm a solution engineer based in Switzerland. So it means I'm working pre-sales for VMware. I joined VMware in 2018. I have a strong data center and end-use computing background. So I did a lot with Horizon Workspace ONE when I joined VMware, and then moved over a little bit later to a generalist role, which means I'm focusing on the whole portfolio and mostly on the multi-cloud and application modernization topics. And yeah, I maintain my own blog, so cloud13.ch. I blog about things where I see that articles or information is missing, and that's why I also wrote the blog article, and I think that's the reason why I'm here today. What else? I'm a vExpert since 2019, and I'm also a co-leader of the Swiss-German VMUG chapter. This allowed me also to become a vExpert Pro, and as you mentioned at the beginning, yes, I'm also part of the CTOA program here at VMware.
Nice. And so when you're talking about Switzerland and Germany, are you at the top of Switzerland? I guess the northern part of Switzerland that then bleeds over into Germany. What city are you out of?
So I live close to Basel, which is the northwestern part of Switzerland. So actually it takes me, 20 minutes to reach the German border. So very close, yes.
Right. Okay. I think I took a train from the southern city, which is Geneva, up over the mountain range and back down into the northern part and into Germany. So it's a beautiful, beautiful country up there. Yep. All right. With that, we'll talk a little bit about your blog. So we always are looking for bloggers that are building articles that are trending. I think you trended again, which is great. So VMware Cloud Foundation, and let's just talk about your blog for a little bit, or let's just do a shout out to it again, which is it's cloud13.ch, which is www.cloud13.ch. So go check out his blog there. Again, thanks for being a vExpert. That's good. And your blog is a very clean, nice blog. So let's talk a little bit about VMware Cloud Foundation. Why did you decide to write a generic overview of VMware Cloud Foundation? What inspired you to do this?
One simple reason, because I thought the information is missing, or let's say the customer, even VCF, so VMware Cloud Foundation, exists for a very long time already. And people know it's vSphere, it's compute, it's storage at vSAN, and NSX for networking. People know that, people heard of it, people, let's say, understand what it means. But I'm mostly surprised when customers coming back and say, Michael, can you explain what VCF really is? What can it do for us? And that's why I thought it makes sense to write something like an overview or technical summary, because this is clearly missing. There's a lot of documentation out there. You have to click through the eDocs. You have to look for FAQs. You get presentations from your VMware partner, VMware employees, but still customers are saying, I don't get it 100%. I maybe understand it 60%, but something like an overview is still missing. And then I said, okay, let's fill that gap. I will write that article. And lucky me, someone internally said, why don't you, publish it as a guest article on TechZone? So this was actually my first official VMware blog, published on TechZone,
Right.
core.vmware.com.
Yeah, it is on TechZone, and I can, core.vmware.com/resources, VMware Cloud Foundation technical overview. So it is on both places, and you can go look at it at the TechZone at VMware.com too. So yeah, cool. I'm not sure which one trended, whether it was your blog or whether it was the TechZone blog, but we did pick it up, so that's interesting. So I like the idea of a summary, right? And VCF is really just a bundle, right, of our traditional SDDC offerings, right?
I mean, it is. It's on paper, at least it's virtual compute, storage, and network, like I said, and with a little bit of automation. And I think sometimes people don't get, the real or the reason why you should go for VMware Cloud Foundation. And experience shows that customers, when they build infrastructure and then they automate it. Let's say the messaging of VMware should be something like this, where we say infrastructure should be automated from the beginning. And that's actually the very important part of VCF. So automation is part of it from day one, or day zero, if you will. And one other aspect is also that customers nowadays, they are still looking at the public cloud. It's fancy. We want public cloud characteristics in our own data center. And VMware Cloud Foundation brings that. So if it's about resource pooling, usage metering, if it's about shared network access or broad network access, something like a self-service approach, this is VCF. This is the VMware Cloud Operating System. This is how I explain it to my customers.
Yeah, it is interesting that you talk about that, because a lot of people stumble into vSphere, right? And they implement vSphere. You get vSphere, and then maybe you do NSXT or vSAN next, right? A lot of people just go to networking and they stop the storage, and then eventually you get mature enough that you start to begin to automate. To your point, right? Where if you start with VCF, and we'll talk a little bit about what you got your blog with regards to hardware requirements. It's a little bit heavier. But then if you start with VCF and deploy, you're getting all of that right up front, right? And it's all bundled.
Exactly.
And does the deployment install this and install it all configured together so it's kind of ready for operations?
Yes, it is. I mean, I have to be honest here, right? So I'm not someone who's delivering this kind of infrastructure and talking more about it and do POCs, but from, let's say, experience has also shown that it's quite fast. Maybe it's to be honest, a little bit complicated at the beginning, because you have to fill in, information into a form, and this allows you then to do the automated deployment. But after that, you're good to go. Then it's very easy.
Right. And then you have, and we'll just cover that, right? So you got vSphere, obviously, you got vCenter, right? You got vSAN, you got NSX, right? These are all make sense. Then you have Workspace ONE for desktop, so that comes bundled with it. Then you get VMware SDDC Manager 4.3, right? Which ends up allowing you to manage that whole piece. And then they give you the automation, which is vRealize Operations, vRealize Log Insight, vRealize Automation, and vRealize Network Insight. So all of that bundled then gives you the whole payload that then allows you to do that. Let's talk the number of machines just to get started. I think in your blog you cover kind of how many machines you need in order to get a cluster to run. How does that work?
I mean, it depends what you're trying to achieve in the end. So you don't need that many VMs and, let's say, resources. But in fact, you need something like a bootstrap machine where you can start a deployment and where you also have the possibility then to deploy the SDDC manager, like you said. And then you decide in the end what makes sense for you. But in the end, it's NSX manager, vSAN and vSphere is anyway included. And then you decide what components of the Realize suite you would like. So it always depends. And also depends on the edition and the license you buy or subscribe.
Right. You have a nice table that talks about the different editions that are out there and what's available, starter versus standard with Tanzu, advanced with Tanzu, enterprise with Tanzu, and then you also have a subscription, right? Like so nice way to see what's available. I think the starter, the only thing the starter doesn't have is Tanzu itself, right? Like everything else looks fairly standard. The standard edition doesn't come with vRealize Network Insights and vRealize Suite, but then Advanced gives you everything. I'm not sure the difference between Advanced and Enterprise versus those two look almost the same. Enterprise,
I think it's vSAN and NSX is the difference. So it's vSAN Advanced versus vSAN Enterprise, for example. But you're right. In all the editions in general have Tanzu included, which makes sense because you see vSphere as the unified platform for running VMs and containers. That's why it just makes sense that it's in general part of every edition.
Right. All right, nicely done. I mean, it is fun to go find it on .com. What are the different versions, right? And you've just laid it out nicely here, right? Which I know I've struggled through this sometimes when people ask me what it is or I'm trying to learn about things. Finding the different versions and what they all include is sometimes a little bit of a lost art, right? So, and then you kind of talk about the three standard designs, today standard design, tomorrow large, and just being able to get in there and get that footprint and define that footprint, right? So I like that. No, I don't really have any questions there. You do lay out what your cluster needs to look like, storage options for this. You also talk about the number of machines. I think you said probably should have 4 machines to start with, right? 4 physical nodes required.
Exactly, yeah, 4.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you go through it. So it is a very clean blog article. And then, I guess you must have had customers that are coming to you asking for the description. What size of customers generally? Are these like mid-tier, small? And they're not SMB. They must be like mid-tier commercial customers that are trying to get started. Are there still customers that haven't, climbed up into this stack already? I feel like if you were already running vSphere, that in your arc, you probably should have already been partly here already, if not already here. I'm actually surprised there are customers that are now looking at Cloud Foundation.
Yeah, I mean, define mid or large customers. So if you talk about US, a mid customer probably is over here in Switzerland, a very large customer, I would assume. So it depends also on the use case and the architecture in general. But let's say, mid to large size enterprises, they are probably best suited for Cloud Foundation. And why? The question is always the same. Do you really need automation? Do you really need something that is doing lifecycle management easier for you? And at the moment, to be honest, it's a little bit, sometimes customers struggle if they think about something that it's automated from the beginning, because then you can argue that it's very static and not dynamic. So it's always a question of perspective. And I'm curious where VMware is going with this kind of architecture in the future, especially with edge use cases, for example. So if everything is becoming smaller, you get VCF, for example, you get the initial 4 nodes for this management workload domain, and at the edge, maybe you have only 2 or 3 nodes. What is VMware going to do? So I see a future where this kind of intelligence that SDDC Manager is bringing as a control plane, that it's somehow transitioning over to the cloud and becoming a SaaS service and a managed offering from VMware, and that the ESXi hosts in the end are becoming, very dumb, stateless, and that's something that you have something like a desired state approach that is configuring in the end the host. So I'm very excited, and I hope even with after the Broadcom acquisition that I see more of that in the future.
Yeah, I think Broadcom, one of the things that now I'm just speculating, and we can talk a little bit about this, that I think VMware's edge offerings also are a great thing that Broadcom likes to offer, its telcos, right? Is, like how to deploy out into the edge. And we have a telco business, right? And so does Broadcom. And so a software solution for the telco business where they can, offer up edge cloud environments, right, is going to be something that they're going to pursue, right? There's no question there's a overlap there, and I think they're interested in that. And they might also be interested in our work on delivering that on ARM platforms, right? And the work we're doing on ARM platforms and delivering ARM-based clouds out into telcos as well, right? So interesting space there that should be interesting to see how that goes. And you're right, they're smaller footprints, right?
Yeah. But it's also interesting to see that edge is growing faster than the regular data centers.
Yeah, I did see as part of this Broadcom acquisition, I kind of realized that Raghu in a couple of his financial meetings presentations been doing for the last 3 months in the first quarter was talking about the growth of edge, right? And the growth of edge was actually outpacing the growth of vSphere in the old days, right? Like when vSphere or ESX was growing, it was growing X amount, and he says edge is growing faster than that. So it is interesting to see how that plays out, right? So that's edge. Great diagrams in there. Does VCF support HCI mesh? Why don't we talk a little bit about what that is?
Yes, it does. So just imagine if compute, RAM, CPU are not scaling equally like storage. So normally you would see, if you think about CPU, RAM, and storage, and you think, something like linear in the diagram, that they are scaling at the same time or almost at the same time and pace. HCI mesh is trying to solve the problem where the storage is disaggregated from the CPU and RAM. For example, if you want to have, if you have workloads which are very resource intensive but not very storage dense, you need to have a solution or an answer for that. And the answer is HCI mesh, which allows you, in fact, to create something like a vSAN data store and connect to that or mount that in another vSphere cluster, which was not possible for a long time. Customers were asking for that, so it's awesome from one vSAN cluster to attach another vSAN data store.
Right. Makes sense. SDDC Manager. Then there's talk to me about SDDC Manager and what does it do? How does it manage all the components of this architecture?
So to date, it's the heart of the whole VMware Cloud Foundation bundle or architecture. So it takes care to automate all the components you have in your whole VCF stack. And I don't know if it's something that is going to last for the next 5 to 10 years. We're going to see that. But like I said, it's very important to have SDDC up and running, as it takes care of the whole portfolio you have installed in the data centers.
Right. As you look into this year, are you planning on going to VMware Explore? Are there interesting topics that you want to look at when you're coming to VMware Explore? Because you're building these articles, you're looking for gaps and holes. I'm just wondering, do they let you out of your office to go to VMware Explore in Europe, or is that something you don't get to do? And what topics are you most interested in next?
I mean, in general, yes, everyone loves to go to an event, right? And especially if it's not VMworld anymore. It's VMware Explorer. So very excited to see the new format, the new speakers, how it's going to be. And as pre-sales solution engineer, you normally have to have a reason that you can join something like this. So if I can bring a customer, yeah, ticket is safe. Otherwise, I will find maybe ways that I can join the event. And I have no specific topic. I think I'm just curious and interested to see how it's going, who the speakers are, what kind of sessions we have this year, and how the new format resonates in the market with all the people.
So you have a super micro home lab on your blog, right? And I know that we didn't talk about this, but have you put VMware Cloud Foundation on it? Like where can you layer this? Where if I have something like a super micro, I think I have a super micro sitting around on the floor here. I don't know what I do with it now. But the question is, you have embedded vSphere. So somebody that's at a home lab and they want to build all this together, have you ever tried to do that? Do you know if anybody has done that? Or do you just install everything local, I guess, and run? What's the strategy there from a home lab? And I see that you did your home lab in 2018. Is it still what you've got documented up on your blog?
So the documentation about it is accurate, but unfortunately the lab is not running anymore. I have just no time for that. But you can run VCF in your home lab. So I had just 3 Supermicro nodes, which is not enough. But you can make use of something which is called VCF Lab Constructor. And this is something like a package appliance, which allows you to deploy VCF in a very dense format into your home lab. And then you get the workload domains or the management workload domains. You can really see, touch, and feel how VMware Cloud Foundation is. And this is the best way or the easiest way. If you have enough nodes, physical nodes with enough capacity, then yeah, sure, why not do that? Install VMware Cloud Foundation in a normal way.
Nice. I gotta say that you've got Raspberry Pi up on your blog too, right? So I'm just kind of taking a look at VMware Horizon Raspberry Pi 4 with Stratodesk, no touch OS. What did you do there?
Good question. So I was a little bit bored. It seems that one customer was asking about thin clients working with Horizon. So I said, let's try out something new. I never had a Raspberry Pi in my hand, and the customer said, I want something which is cheap. The power consumption should be okay. It should be small, and something that you can install very quickly, that everyone can do it. Just plug and play, it just works. And yeah, so I ordered the Raspberry Pi and tried to figure out how it performs. How does it work? Does it even work with Horizon? Does it work with Citrix? How's the performance? Can I watch 4K YouTube videos over a published desktop? It seems yes, it's possible. And this was my experience. So I said, nobody has documented that. I will do it. And actually, the Raspberry Pi block with Horizon, this is by far the most successful block I ever wrote in the past 4 years.
I know if I just mention Raspberry Pi on the podcast, I get an extra 1,000 links because it auto texts everything, and then the text gets promoted. So I just started to throw that in there so we get more views on the podcast. Because I think my biggest podcast download ever was 12,000 in a week, and it was because we were talking about Raspberry Pi, ESX on Raspberry Pi, and the Raspberry Pi stuff that we did at VMworld that year, trends, and away you go. It looks like you went to KubeCon. Did you go to KubeCon, or did you just write a summary of KubeCon 2022?
No, I've been there actually. So I was in Valencia, and it was my first time attending a KubeCon. So yeah,
what was your impression?
Yeah, that's actually a very, very good question, because this open source community and CNCF and all these open source projects, this is not my main domain, right? So I have not deep knowledge about that, and let's say a very limited understanding. So my expectation was a little bit different what I expected what KubeCon would be. So first time KubeCon, I thought, keynotes, big announcements. It must be something like VMworld or VMware Explorer. No, it's not. I learned very, very fast that I have no clue about, open source projects and all this technology and all the features. And I think 99% of the people in the room were just, more smarter than me. I felt really dumb, to be honest, because I had no clue what they were talking about in the more technical sessions. But it was very interesting to see where this open source community is going to. And I think that it has a very bright future.
Yeah, I think that, it is. They have open source. They have solutions for cloud native, and there's a lot of different things that are there that it takes you probably a half a year just to learn the vocabulary, right? When you go, right, like you realize how many small startups with cool names are out there that you've never heard of, right? Or projects that are out there that are then have a startup that are with them and that you've never heard of. So it is interesting that you experience that, and that's something good for everybody that's listening to understand, is that some of this stuff, it's like, I remember coming to VMware the first time I came to VMware, there was a lot of terms and things that I didn't know, right, that I got into, and it took me a year and a half to learn enough of the vocabulary to make sense, right, of everything you're hearing, let alone working on the technology. And my take is, I think there's a lot more engineers there, right, that are part of the open source crowd. Did you get that sense that it was more, engineering and app builders versus app infrastructure?
Yeah, definitely. So everything was about coding, about the different products and features. What's also great to see they talk about developer experience. So it was really interesting for me. And like I said, I think it was less about infrastructure. It was more focused on the apps, where Kubernetes is going, how you build applications, what the experience is with a project or open source project, ABCD, what you could do. So yeah, exactly. This is what I've seen.
Yeah, what I've seen is reading about it is a lot of then what were the struggles of building the app, right? And less about infrastructure, more about the challenges to build the app and then have the infrastructure support the app, right? So very, very much tied to the application itself. So yeah, interesting experience. I saw that on your blog, and a pretty blog over there too, right? So again, great to have you writing all this stuff. I know you have a VMware Cloud article where you talk about vRealize Cloud Universal and vCloud Suite subscription. I assume that's just kind of subscription for vRealize, which is
exactly.
vRealize is part of the Cloud Foundation, so it's basically the same topic, but you're talking about subscription there. Anything interesting from a subscription perspective? I assume subscription is just use case. Do they actually check for usage, or do they you just buy a license and you're paying for it as you go? I'm just curious whether they've actually gotten into usage-based billing yet.
Let's say we are not there yet. So if a customer buys 500 subscription licenses, you're going to check in and check out. If you oversubscribe, you just pay the overcharge and increase the amount of licenses. It's like this at the moment, but I think it's very nice to see that we are making progress in that space, that we also see new features and capabilities, like Project Arctic, which is coming in the future, keyless ESXi, the license is consumed or checked out from a SaaS service, and then in the future your vCenter is going to be managed by VMware or a VMware partner. And yeah, I'm excited. This is something I hope is coming this year, maybe at VMware Explore, I don't know. But yeah, subscription and SaaS offerings are getting big, I think, this year.
Okay. We have a question chat, which I'm not sure you'll know the answer to because it sounds technical. But back on VCF, anything new about VCF WLD for Horizon VDI?
Oh yeah, I see that. So I think Raul, I think you're referring to the automated deployment of Horizon as part of VCF, which has been removed a while ago. To be honest, I have no clue if it's coming back. I would assume not, because I worked in the EUC. I'm having a data center background, and I said to myself, does it really make sense to have an automated deployment of VDI or Horizon in general? And my answer would be no, because you have to assess the infrastructure. Sure, it's a dedicated workload domain, but in the end, you design how many connection servers you want to have, how many desktops, how you want to build it in the end. And yeah, it's quite easy to deploy a few desktops, connection servers, and all the other components like UAGs the unified access gateway, for example, the ones you need. And it even makes less sense, to be honest, in the future when we have Project Titan or the Horizon Cloud Service coming in the future, where you have the control plane offered as a managed service. And in the end, you just deploy some gateways at the edge or in a data center. And that besides the virtual desktops or the terminal servers. I hope that answers your question, Raul.
Great. So we talked about VMware Explorer, talked about getting you there. Anything else from the field that you're seeing that customers are bothering you about, or that you're seeing in Europe that's different that we might not experience? I always like when we get field people on because you can drill down a little bit on what their perspective is. So I guess I'll just say, if you could think of the top 3 things that excite you for the rest of the year, what would they be? Or what are the learnings you're experiencing that you go, oh, this is interesting for the rest of the year?
3 things, yeah. So I'm excited about Tanzu. I'm curious where we are heading to with all the different products. We had additions at the beginning, then we got different products or bundles like Tanzu for Kubernetes Operations or Tanzu Application Platform. So I'm very interested what we as a company are doing in that space and what we might be able to offer in the future in the next 6 to 12 months. Second topic, probably it's going towards SaaS and subscriptions. So we know VMware and like other vendors or companies are moving towards subscription licenses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the most customers are asking about Kubernetes and application modernization and managed services. What do I mean by that? You see the Tanzu portfolio has a lot of SaaS services, and they expect the same, let's say, for vSphere or NSX. So the questions come up, what about, vSAN witness, for example? If you have edge locations, 2 vSAN nodes, and you still have to have the witness, is it coming as a SaaS service in the future? What about NSX? Everything is going towards edge in the future. Less big data centers, smaller footprints. What about NSX Manager? Is it also something that is coming in the future as a offered SaaS service? This is maybe, let's say, my second priority. And the third, as a European guy or in Switzerland in general, when it's more about data privacy, I think sovereign clouds. So we have more articles in newspapers about sovereign clouds. We have also more customers asking about that. In general, we have sovereign clouds. If it's if it's a data center from a service provider that it's hosted, in this case in Switzerland, operated by Swiss people, you could say it's already sovereign cloud, right? But since we as VMware offer a sovereign cloud initiative and something like a stamp or a badge for this kind of infrastructure, we see more and more interest in this market.
Interesting. So let me just drill down. Sovereign cloud is we stamp that everything that's running is running in a given nation, that we can guarantee that is delivered through, in a given nation borders. Is that what that is? I'm guessing at that.
No, we are not. Let's say we have something like a framework, but the customer in the end is telling, I have some of, let's say, VMware technology as part of my sovereign cloud, and because of A, B, C, D, I can assure you this is by definition a sovereign cloud. So I take care of audit, backup, and restore. I tell you how to do it. I can tell you which people are certified and validated and so on. And this is something like a framework. This is which is being assessed in, at the specific moment. And if we say, okay, this sounds like a sovereign cloud, you will get the stamp. So it's not us guaranteeing it, so it's the customer.
What I'm looking for is a definition of what does sovereign mean when you talk sovereign cloud. For people that are listening that might not have heard that term, it is talking about in nation borders. Is that what sovereign cloud means?
Yeah, it's like a nation cloud or a Swiss cloud, if you will, in my example. So it's data center hosted in Switzerland and operated by Swiss nationals.
Resources and so forth, right?
Yep, exactly.
Makes sense. So that's interesting. That's a third topic. So Tanzu was a topic. Sovereign cloud was a topic. And what was this? The middle one that we talked about?
The SaaS services.
SaaS services. So SaaS services, Tanzu, and Sovereign Cloud. Your top three that are showing up. So maybe we'll get a blog article on Sovereign Cloud, how to build one. What does it look like? That would be an interesting one to see. I'd like to hear about that because I haven't heard anything about that in the US. I think that's a very European thing also, because Europe is very much a data center, security driven, everything in my nation, right? Where the US, we don't tend to do that very much, or we get that somewhat, but yeah, interesting. Well, I'm out of topics. If you don't have anything else, we'll wrap up. We always do at the end of the podcast. We talk a little bit about barbecue. I think I asked you about barbecue back on the last episode you were here, but I will do that in Switzerland. What's your favorite barbecue? Do you get barbecue? And if so, do you make any, or do you just go buy it, or do you not have it at all?
I mean, in general, me as a person, yes, I love meat. I do a lot of barbecues, and I want to get, I want to use my garden. So yes, whenever the weather is good, if it's not too freezing outside, let's buy a piece of meat and put it on the grill.
Put it on the grill. All right. Do you smoke, or do you use charcoal, or how do you grill?
It's a gas grill. So no charcoal anymore.
There you go. You do put the gas on it and go. We don't know. In the US, we cringe and we go, we're not sure that's actually barbecue. That might just be cooking right outside. But everything is, there's no right or wrong answer there. So I appreciate you spending your time, Michael. Are you on Twitter, and what is your Twitter handle?
_ Michael Rebmann.
All right. So
this is my Twitter handle.
All right. MichaelRebmann. So _ Michael Rebmann. Perfect. Go give him a follow. Great to have you on again. Nice article. Great article. Obviously, it trended, so people were interested in reading about it. So appreciate that. Appreciate it being up on .com and on your blog as well. And thanks for your sidebar shout out to VMware Community Podcast. I appreciate that on your blog as well. Kind of cool. Wish we had Matt back here with Corey, but we just happened to have a vacation week going on here. So we'll get them back. Maybe we'll get back on the show in less than another year. If you have a great article, I'd love to have you back on. Thanks for joining and sharing your article with us.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right. With that, we are done for today. I'm sure there will be much more Broadcom news as we go forward over the next couple months. We'll try to keep everybody updated. If you want to come in and check, I will just be unabashed honest on what I learned and what I can share. So we'll continue on. What I would say right now is don't panic. Get your towel. If you ever read the Hitchhiker to the Galaxy book, right? He says, don't panic, and make sure you have a towel because I think we're going to go on a ride, and but I am confident that your investment in vSphere will continue to be protected. So if you're running a data center, the reason they're paid $61 billion for the company was because of vSphere, vSAN, NSX, even I think Tanzu on vSphere will be important. They're looking at how to monetize it differently, but the investment in the technology itself will continue on. So until then, have a great rest of your day. Go get some barbecue, and we'll be back again next week.